Today we have a very interesting case. This is a 32-year-old who had prior to classical vertical C-sections. The first classical vertical C-section was when she was 26 weeks, and she was delivered by a stat C-section at 26 weeks due to severe preeclampsia. She had a vertical scar right here where you can see the vertical scar from the previous C-section. Here we were evaluating the uterine cavity with hysteroscopy. Reason why you can see water coming out from a small defect that was on the anterior uterine wall, and there was a lot of fluid in the pelvic cavity due to this small defect in the middle of the scar. The second C-section was 32 weeks, and she had a spontaneous rupture of the uterus, where she also had a stat C-section. So this is that was the second classical C-sections. And at this time, she came into my office because she was looking at getting pregnant. And the recommendation by the maternal fetal medicine was to repair the anterior uterine wall previous to the planning of the next pregnancy. Here we're injecting vasopressin in between the myometrium for the hemostasis. Here I want you to see there was the scar from the previous vertical uterine incision, but I can still see significant thickness of the myometrium around this scar. That's where I'm injecting the dilution of vasopressin. That is an ampule of vasopressin on 100 cc's of normal saline. Here you can see the uterus, the response of the uterus with vasopressin. Now we're getting ready to repair this defect. So I'm using the monopolar scissors. Very low energy on cut, not on quack. That way we can prevent thermal spread from the scissors. And important is the tissue handling and the double layer. This defect has to be closed on multi-layer and on a transverse fashion to maintain the vascularity of the myometrium. Here I'm using very low energy with the monopolar scissors on cut. I decided to leave this part of the myometrium because significant thickness, you can see the significant thickness still in the myometrium. So I cut the defect that was in the middle of the scar. Using very low energy on cut. We'll continue to remove the scar. Another thing that I decided was not to cut completely the myometrium and get into the endometrial cavity to not damage the endometrial cavity. Try to see if there was enough healthy myometrium underneath. So here you can see the healthy myometrium underneath, the defect where water from the hysteroscopy was coming out, where there was healthy myometrium around there. So I was getting ready to close this in a double layer. The first one was to close the defect, and the last layer was close in a transverse fashion. Again, it's important to close this in a transverse fashion to maintain the vascularity of the uterine wall. Small energy, very low energy was used. Here I was closing the defect first. We were using V-lock, that is in late absorbable suture. Very important here is the handling of the tissue. One of the disadvantages that we have with the robotic system, and in this case the XI, is that we don't have the haptics. So we have to be very careful how much we pull each suture. And this is to prevent strangulation of the muscle and maintain vascularity. So you can see the closure of the defect, and then the second layer was going to be closed in a transverse fashion. So that's close of the defect, and then I'm getting ready here to close in a transverse fashion the rest of the myometrium. Careful to put a lot of tension on each suture. Here we're approximating the myometrium. Trying not to get all the suture all the way to the inside the endometrium. Here you can see that I'm reapproximating a very good thickness of the myometrium. Here I want you to see I'm using a graft. This is an amniotic membrane allograft called amnio-effect. This is considered to increase, to augment the healing by enhancing tissue regeneration and reducing adhesions, especially in cases with excessive defects or scar recurrence. The amnio-effect is placed in between the myometrium. Again, I insist here to put not to put too much tension in between each suture. This is a multi-layer closure. The first one was to close the defect, and the second was to close the rest of the myometrium in a transverse fashion. The old scar was vertical. Here we're getting ready to finish the closure. And here then at the end I decide to place another piece of allograft, amnio-effect. So here I'm placing the allograft, the amnio-effect, and to prevent the movement of these allografts, I'm placing on top of the allograft same laid absorbable suture with the V-lock suture. And this is only to maintain in place the allograft. This is the end result, where we can see the allograft placed, in this case amnio-effect, on top of the uterine scar. And then at the end we place a hemostatic agent to prevent bleeding after the wear off of the vasopressin dilution. So this is the end of this is the result of the closure. Thank you for your attention, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.